The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, Digital Transformation, Connecting Our Digital Dots.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special edition of In Focus, where we bring you conversations, reflections, and the way forward. I'm your host for this series, Leah Crag-Chaderton, and today we are logging on to an essential conversation. Digital transformation, connecting our digital dots. As the world becomes more digitized, everything from our apps to our algorithms plays a role in reshaping our society. But how do we make sure we're connected to the right strategies, one? And how do we ensure that no one gets disconnected in the process as we move towards progress? Joining us today, we have a distinguished panel. And as we discuss the opportunities and challenges related with digital transformation, we have Nigel, Carty, Ophelia, Blanchard, Philip Carter, and Rodney Browne. Together, we'll be uploading some great insights on how St. Kitts and Nevis can continue to upgrade our digital future while ensuring we all have the bandwidth. So, welcome to Where Reflection Meets Action. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'll have you introduce yourselves briefly and let our viewing audience know why we're listening to you today.
So, I'm Nigel Carty. I was trained in the field of technology many years ago, 25 to 30 years ago. I also practice as an educator, teaching in the field of technology, and I've also served in government as Minister responsible for technology. Currently, I'm serving as an advisor to the Minister of Technology, and having lead responsibility for digital transformation. So perhaps I can share perspective or two.
Fantastic. Over to Mr. Cable.
Okay, so my name is Philip Carter. I am the head of sales and marketing for the cable. Much like Nigel, my experience in this industry is about 2 decades or so. I've worked for all of the major operators in the Caribbean, from Guyana to Jamaica. So I've been in the industry for a very long time, and I've got some experience that I would love to impart across the panel.
Fantastic. Over to you, Rodney.
Yes, Rodney Browne, CEO of eCaribbean Limited, web solutions agency located here in St. Kitts Nevis. We've been in operation for the past 19 years. So next year will be the big 2-0. Prior to that, I've been in the startup industry, tech industry in various capacities, some of which I would speak to today.
Awesome. And last, but certainly not least, Miss Ophelia.
And I am currently the e-government coordinator in the Department of Technology, Ministry of ICT and Post. I have been in the IT industry for over 15 years. I have worked at different levels in terms of software engineer, quality assurance personnel, right up to acting director position. In terms of my qualifications, I would have done a law degree, computer science degree, and has worked in different spheres in terms of public and private sector. I'm pleased to be here on the panel and to share my expertise and suggestions.
Okay, fantastic. So it's the hot seat. I'll let you all know now. Everyone who's come on here has had to answer some difficult questions, and you will be no different, not because I love and adore all of you. This isn't the Leah you know, this is Conversations Leah. So let's start with the big question. What does digital transformation mean for St. Kitts and Nevis, in your own words? And Rodney, from the private sector, I'll take you first, and then we'll work our way out.
Batting first, okay. Digital transformation, not taking the textbook definition, but from my vantage point and from my viewpoint, I see it more of an empowerment issue and process where, from education and training components, citizens are able and equipped to deal with what it is the interaction you mentioned earlier in terms of person's understanding. This was off camera. The simple procedures to obtain information. What do you do with the information? There's having that knowledge, having that education. So transformation, there are different levels. You have the infrastructure, you have the process, technology, but you also have the human element in terms of people understanding how to utilize what they have before them. So I'm sure Carty and Ophelia would be able to speak to the infrastructural aspect of it, but on a whole, is those steps I see as digital transformation. Infrastructure towards human interaction.
Quite insightful. Philip, anything to add?
I would echo that, but digital transformation, when you think about that, it's more about how you interact with the information. And the way we interact with information has steadily been changing from the 90s through the early 2000s to today, where AI has taken over everything. We're all interacting with chatbots now as opposed to speaking with actual people and that type of thing. So the access to the internet, for one, is quite primary in order to enable that type of interaction with this new age in which we're in.
Great, thank you so much. So we're moving now to our government sector representatives. And can you tell me, how has the government's approach to digital transformation evolved, let's say over the past 5 to 10 years?
I can start off. So first of all, Rodney spoke to what digital transformation means from a whole of society approach, which I think is an excellent approach. It's about impacting people, processes, and systems. From a government perspective or from an organizational perspective, it is really about applying digital technologies, computers, networks, etc., etc., to improve efficiency, to sort of make the organization more customer-centric. If, for example, you are a private organization like the cable or, let's say a bank, it is about how you use technologies to make sure that you're interfacing with people and people are interfacing with your organization in a way that is more appealing and more effective for them and so forth. How has digital transformation evolved over the last 5 to 10 years?
From the administration perspective.
Yeah, from the administration perspective. Right. First of all, digital transformation is nothing new. We are trying to scale up the scope and impact of what we're doing in technology. But if I can think back to, say, 15, 20 years ago, when we had first gotten into the idea of making the heavy use of computers within the public sector, looking, for example, at the planning department in the government, there was a time when even I had not yet touched the computer, but there were computers within the government system. Today, what we're doing is making sure that we can scale up in terms of the expansion of connectivity across the government. So it's making sure that our schools, our various government offices are not only connected, but they're connected using the most effective means of data transmission. So that is talking about upscaling the bandwidth, and it's also talking about making sure that we can put the training programs in place, because when we talk about digital transformation, at the core of that, we are talking about people. And so we are trying to elaborate training programs, and we're trying to make sure that not only are we equipping people to be employed in the digital sector, we're also talking about ensuring that the entire populace is ready to engage in a digital world.
So that last part in particular, before I let Ophelia, or actually maybe Ophelia, you can jump in terms of clarifying that. We speak about the public and appreciating digital transformation. What can you say to us about the fear that our people have of being replaced by digital transformation, being replaced by machines and computers and AI even? Is that a real fear? Is that something that you think we have to worry about in the short to medium term?
I would say that one of the things that we have to look at is a mindset and a culture. We would have gone through years where persons would not have had a computer, to the point where now computers are ubiquitous. We have our mobile phones, for example, and with our mobile phones, we realize that we are totally connected. And with things like IoTs, Internet of Things, we are connecting anything to the internet. And so we are constantly digitally connected. And so I think that we have to do a lot in terms of public awareness and education, and building in terms of digital literacy, so persons really understand how they can better utilize the technology to enable them, because technology should be an enabler or supporting our efforts to make us more efficient, to make us more effective in what we do in our processes. And I think that if we continue to push as we are in terms of building and supporting digital literacy programs, then our people as a whole will be better informed and can utilize the technology to the best for their work.
Okay, I'm going to stay picking on the government workers for a bit. You mentioned efficiency that comes with the transition to the digital era, and especially customer-centric, as well as making your general work more efficient. How much of that has currently been implemented within the government service? I know specifically there's still very strict rules about using the minutes paper system and having a huge paper trail that goes not just from ministry to ministry, but within ministry, department to department. How do we envision digital transformation affecting that to reduce that level of paper pushing?
Well, governments are famous for having a lot of bureaucracy. They're generally large in comparison to most other organizations. And And that is why digital transformation is critically important from the standpoint of the government. A lot of work has already happened with respect to digital transformation. For example, Ophelia can tell you more about the KN travel form. Coming into St. Kitts, you fill out a form over there, and in a matter of seconds, you receive a response giving you the permission to enter the country and so forth. You can look, for example, at what is happening at Inland Revenue. A whole lot has happened there. So businesses, individuals who are filing taxes and so forth can stay at home or wherever they are and do their tax transactions and so forth. From the standpoint of the Treasury, a lot of the work has now been automated. So you have civil servants and other payees, other clients of the government, whom the government pays on a regular basis, receiving their payments electronically. There is hardly any human intervention, for example, when it comes to regular payments at the end of the 2-week period, end of the month when people are being paid. Those are automated. So a lot has happened, but clearly there's a lot more that needs to happen. Let's take, for example, having to apply for a passport. So the process, as you know, you go to the post office, you get your stamps, you get a form, you fill it out, you go by the police station, you get your record, and then you go to the birth records office. And you get all of those things together and you sign the form, you get somebody to sign it for you and so forth, and you go down and you whatever have you and so on. That is a very cumbersome process. So we are actually in the process of making sure that we can do those things electronically. So you can get online, fill out an application form, and all of the relevant information required to lodge the application can be harnessed online. So those are things that we're doing. Of course, the process is not a one-day process. There's a lot that has to happen to get that to work, but we are building the blocks that are going to get us to that. Ophelia can probably talk about the EID project as well as the registry, the civil registry, which are components of that.
Okay.
Please.
To add to what Mr. Carty would have said, it's a process, and one understand that policies, regulations are in place, and so we have to look at reviewing in order for some of these processes to change, or even minutes paper to be moving from one ministry to the next. We also have to look at the policies, we have to look at the regulations, and there would need to be proper review and assessments. We also have to put in place information systems, collection of data, and one key aspect of it is to ensure that data is also protected. And so that applies to our data protection laws, for example. We would have, as Mr. Carty would have shared, done some work in terms of digitization. So most persons would know when they're traveling and they're returning home to St. Kitts and Nevis or they're visiting St. Kitts and Nevis, they would have to fill out the KNA travel form. And that is an example of what we would have done in terms of having a process which was previously paper-based, which is now digitized and fully interconnected with the border management system. So we would have seen some gains there. We would have also seen in terms of the Ministry of Social Services, we would have seen some online processing in terms of Lyft. Persons who are applying for Lyft service, then they can utilize an online application process. And what you'll be seeing is that more services would become digitized. And there's a lot of work being done in terms of capturing these processes, because processes move from one department to the next. And some of them actually involve the private sector. For example, we have the vehicle registration process, where persons can actually go to have their vehicles registered through traffic department, which connects with the various parties, whether it be through the dealers, insurance, inland revenue, and that is our interconnected system that is operational. One of the things that we'll be looking at is to proceed with upgrading and digitizing the civil registry, where persons will be familiar with the Bastia Health Center, where they can go and get their births, get the marriage certificate. And so we're in the process of having that reviewed and looking to digitize that. And that, of course, feeds into our other projects, because it is so important that we are able to get those processes documented, digitized, ensuring that it is secure, because cybersecurity is a top priority for government. And so we are doing that in partner with the legislative review and ensuring that the systems are secure to build confidence for our citizens.
That was certainly a mouthful. I'm just happy about the online passport. That's where I'm sold, the online passport application. But it is amazing to learn of these initiatives. And it just tells me then that we also need to ensure, even though we have these things happening, we ensure to use the digital tools available to make the public aware that this is what's happening, this is what you have to look forward to, and actually get buy-in from them and see how they can assist with the process as well and make the process easier when it's time to roll out. Speaking of roles, I'll turn to Philip. The cable has been a staple in our digital environment for decades.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about the role that the cable plays or has played in the digital transformation throughout St. Kitts and Nevis?
Okay, so the cable is celebrated 41 years, just as St. Kitts did as a country, St. Kitts and Nevis.
And me.
African Nevis, St. Kitts and Nevis, yes. And the primary objective is to make sure that the internet is available, it is affordable, and it is accessible by all of the citizens of St. Kitts. We're not in Nevis yet. So that is the primary objective. So you will see from our history, we have had multiple tiers of internet plans. The pricing has not changed in 41 years. Our pricing has always been affordable and has not changed to date. But what you will notice is that over time, our internet speeds have doubled in some cases and increased incrementally as the years have gone by. Just last Christmas, we had a promotion where all users had a minimum of 100 meg for, I think it was a 2-month period, right? So that everyone was able to experience that level of speed. If perhaps you had a 15 meg plan before that was in your price point, you too could see what it felt like to access and interact with the world at 100 meg. All right, so the cable is really focused on that. There's multiple ways in which we do so as well through our Platinum Loyalty Card. Even if you had a lower tier broadband service, you could get a PLC card and upgrade your service simply by having that card. But the nature of getting that PLC, you could upgrade your status. So there's many creative ways that we've taken to do this, to keep the pricing at a level that is affordable for all Kittitians and still provide tremendous value.
I like that you spoke about availability, which then leads me to think about accessibility. And we touched it earlier when we spoke about, I think it's Rodney that raised it, in terms of people being able to utilize the tools that are available. Yeah. So Rodney, I'm coming back to you now on this, as it relates to what is referred to globally as the digital divide. How can you expound on what you think the digital divide is within our federation, and if you think there even is one?
That's a heavy one. Let me see how I could phrase it. This would be my personal opinion, of course.
That's fine. Actually, your professional opinion.
Not necessarily supported by any facts that I could tap into immediately, but 20 years ago, for sure, there was a major digital divide. If you're going to go by decades in St. Kitts and Nevis and the region in particular. It was obvious, just again, from an infrastructural aspect. Not most areas had the same level of access in terms of internet, to begin with, speed, and as Ophelia and Carty mentioned earlier, equipment such as devices. That was not readily available. Today, while I'm sure there are areas in terms of families and persons who may not have, say, the latest device, I think there was some reports some years back that the penetration level in St. Kitts Nevis is, the device ownership was more than 100%, if I recall correctly.
That's accurate.
Right. So that speaks to the availability of, and Ophelia again mentioned earlier that we have a computer in our hands. So that is the first step. If you can get, and again, it wasn't the situation where, say, 10 years ago, a smartphone wasn't really the smartphone of today. You could get a basic smartphone that is quite capable. So all those shrink the divide significantly. where from the standpoint of information, anyone can access information easily. And when I say information, you pull up your phone, you ask a question, you have options, you could research. So the divide in the sense of access to information, I can't say that I see it, but there is a divide in terms of intent. What I mean by that is that you having the access does not necessarily mean that you're equipped or ready to utilize the access. So it's having, and was mentioned again earlier, mindset. How do we shape the mindset for persons, the citizens, to understand the capabilities they currently possess? They may be saying or thinking, I can't do it, or I'm not equipped, but you have a great start. So I don't see a necessary divide in terms of devices. Maybe there's some skill set, but all those can be overcome in terms of shaping mindset.
Right, so, okay, I understand that. So what we're saying is that persons have access to technology.
I would think so.
They have the devices, whether it's tablets, phones, computers, laptops, etc. I really want to hone in on your last point, though, as it relates to digital literacy, because that is the divide that I really want to focus on.
That's the divide.
So where are we in terms of that, based on your experience in your field? You interact with numerous persons, whether in their private capacity, professional capacity, for their business, etc. So you would be in a good place to actually give us a sense of what level of digital literacy do the people who come to you have?
Unfortunately, there hasn't been, well, let me start with the positive first. The young people, quote unquote young people, are more and more ready and capable, generally speaking. But again, it's from my experience, there's something missing in terms of I don't want to say identifying opportunities. So let me give a little bit of backstory from my experience. I didn't go to university to obtain a computer science degree. I'm self-taught, right? And a big part of that came from me identifying opportunity. I touched my first computer when I was 22, right? I was given an opportunity because I was always into art, drawing. And my roommate at the time was living, sharing an apartment with an old high school friend. He was always into computers. He worked at a software development company based in St. Kitts, and I'll speak more about that later, back in 1997, thereabout. Long time. Ancient times.
I remember them times.
Let's not age anybody on here. Let's be kind to us.
Ago.
Thank you.
And he approached me and he said, there's an opening. I was working at TDC at the time. There was an opening in the company for a graphic designer. So he asked me if I'm interested. I said, sure. I like drawing and so on. He said, well, you have to use a computer. I said, well, just let me see what it is. So I went, applied. The owner at the time was, I have to commend him highly. He was gracious enough to understand that I was beyond green. But what he saw in me, I imagine, was a drive to learn and to really get into it. So within a few months, I proved myself well enough to be given a full-time position as a graphic designer. Left TDC, went to work, never looked back. And then understanding that I'm being exposed to the fact that this was a totally new world. And it was mine to play a part in or to be left behind. So I think from that standpoint, the young persons and others, you don't have to discount yourself thinking that you can't, either because you think the wagon has left already, or there's too much for you to learn to overcome the divide, whatever the case may be. Just have a start. You believe in yourself, you understand that the opportunities are still there and exist, and have the drive to pursue. That is how I see it.
Fantastic. So I hear you in terms of we need to take ownership of our own literacy across the board, whether digital or otherwise. But let me hear now from our government representatives, do we think that the government has a role to play to ensure that its populace is literate, especially in areas that it intends to go? Because how do you transform a sector that is going to essentially seep into every area of persons' lives without ensuring that these people understand what's happening and how they can be a part of it? So tell me a bit about how do you intend to, if there is an intent, or how do you see the government engaging with its citizens to ensure that the digital divide as it relates to the digital literacy is reduced?
Right, so maybe I can start off and Ophelia can follow. The government has always seen itself as a major player in cultivating digital literacy in the country. I remember, for example, when I was Minister of Education, working with the Minister of Technology at that time to begin to distribute computers around schools. That was all because we believed that it's critically important to make the devices available, to give people the opportunity to explore, to learn on their own, while also thinking about creating formal curricular material to engage our young people. So the government continues to believe in that. But as we scale up what we call our digital transformation program, we have to think in a more formal way. We have to think in a more holistic way, I should say, about how we equip people to participate in the digital economy. We have to think about the range of skills that people need, basic digital literacy, so that they can use the devices to find out the cost of goods, at stores in St. Kitts Nevis or abroad. We have to teach people to use the device for research, but we also need higher level skills. One of the challenges we are now facing, and I think Ophelia can expand on this, her having been acting director of the Department of Technology, there seems to be at a certain level a dearth of skills that are very much in need in St. Kitts Nevis. So you have a host of positions in the Department of Technology, but as you look around, you're not quite seeing all of the people to fit into those positions. So looking at this from a broader perspective, it is about looking at the range of skills that are required to get people involved, to get people connected, but also to ensure that businesses and the public sector have people who have the skills that can power the digital transformation. We are not going to be able to do this if enough of our people don't have the skills to be network engineers, to be software developers, to be project managers, etc., etc. Those are the things that we have to look at a broad scale.
It is critically important that we ensure our people are adequately prepared. So I'm happy to hear that that is high on the government's priority list. Ophelia, you had anything to add to that as it relates to the upskilling of our people?
So I do support what Mr. Carty would have said as well. And what I would say is that, yes, government has a critical role to play in terms of digital literacy. And it is a collaborative effort. We have different players, both public and private partners, that have to work collaboratively together to do this, because we are looking at a federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And so we are looking at everything from early childhood right up to senior persons. We have to look at the strategy in terms of educating persons at different levels and different stages, and understanding that people learn in different ways. And so we have an opportunity where we at the Department of Technology, we have an innovation center, albeit a hub, small, but we have opened it up to the public, where persons would have had the opportunity to attend training sessions from basic computing to probably like camps, skill camps. We would have had training on 3D and robotics in the past, and we want to continue to do so. And one of the things that we are actually looking at in terms of digital transformation, we want to establish somewhat of a digital academy, whereby we can build digital skills. And that would be a collaboration with different entities within government as well as the private sector, because we recognize that within government we do not have all the technical skill set. We do have a severe shortage, for example, in terms of e-government, we have a severe shortage of software engineers. I would have looked at, we would have advertised positions for software engineers, and we noticed that it took us probably about 9 months before we can see applications that demonstrate persons who have software engineer skill set with the experience in the field that are amicable to the salary scales of government. And so we recognize that there is a mismatch that we have to look at in terms of the skills and the compensation as well. Because this is a different type of skill sets that we are looking at, which some persons can see an opportunity even to build a business, to expand a career, and even to go on and do work where they're doing stuff for persons all around the world. So we could extend that particular quality of skill set beyond borders and create opportunities for job creation.
Well, I'm definitely happy to learn of those upcoming opportunities, and that you are, as a government administration, recognizing the need for aligning the compensation package with the level of qualification that you require. Sometimes I think that I missed my calling, and I shouldn't have done what I did, and I should have started in the digital sector, but it's too late for me.
You haven't missed it. You haven't missed it. You haven't missed it.
It's happening right now.
You spoke about collaboration, and I wanted to hone a bit more in on that, especially since we have the representative from the cable here. What role does companies like the cable play in the whole digital transformation, especially as it relates to assisting with improving the digital divide, whether in terms of access to internet, access to devices, but also the upskilling? How can you collaborate with the government to ensure that we get to where we need to be?
Okay, so I would point you to the recently, deployed infrastructure project that we did with the Ministry of Health, where we have essentially connected 3 hospitals and all of the major health clinics across St. Kitts to each other, where someone can walk into Pogson with a health issue of some kind and have the nurses there connect to a specialist at JNF visually and via audio as well, and have that person be diagnosed on the spot. All right, so that type of collaboration is what we're looking to do a bit more with government across the other ministries as well. Ministry of Education, for example, comes to mind. And that's where we have to go in terms of focusing on, as you say, bridging the digital divide, collaboration. However, I would want to also suggest that the governments, in wanting these things, they need to provide budgets for their ministries to do these things. It's not enough to just talk about digital transformation audibly, and it sounds good, everybody claps, yeah. But where's the budget? How do we get to execute? So we just executed with the Ministry of Health, and we're very grateful to Prime Minister Drew and his team, and to Mr. Martin, the head of the hospital there, to for working with us and getting this over the line. But we want to do more. There's more that we can do, and so we're just on standby for other government departments to kind of see where they want to go, and then we can work together to get there.
Let's unpack that budget issue for a bit.
Let's.
I'm going to put my cards though. It's not a question that's on here. I need to be very careful. I need them to bring me back next week. So as someone who works within the government sector myself, I am fully understanding of your plight. We have a lot of projects that we would like to execute, but the budget is an issue.
Yeah.
And as it relates to collaboration, I think that's the main area that the focus is on. So whereas we have to understand that the government is a limited entity.
Of course.
It is not an ever-generating, it's not an income generator, correct. Yeah. And because a lot of what the government does is more or less social services, even in other aspects. So I work in entrepreneurship and whatnot, but it's still a social good that the government provides. Good. Yeah. So the budget is limited, but I do understand. What I want us to unpack though is how can we get from where we are with the limited budget and understand, because everybody seems to have this misconception that government has all of this money.
No, man.
And if y'all do, I would like to tap into it. FYI, just in case you have any over there in IT that we could use. Shameless plug. But How do you think we get past this? Because this is something that needs to be done.
One word.
Good.
Optimization.
Optimization.
Yes, ma'am. So if we talk about the IXP that we just launched, for example, instead of having to go out to the internet to get data to come back to deliver that data, I mean, it's only milliseconds, but over time, these things add up to time and hours spent waiting and cost of equipment and all of that. That type of optimization can then be cascaded throughout government. So there's a lot of duplication of effort, a lot of redundant bits and pieces of equipment, multiple PBXs in multiple places, where a single PBX will run the entirety of government. Unified communications, so when person call, desk one, that person's not there, it can be transferred directly to a mobile or to a remote worker somewhere else if it's some sort of specialized need. There's a lot that we can do. I've been to several conversations at the ICT's office with, the Tony Blair Institute and so on, the different things out there. So the intention is definitely there across government to get to this point, so we'll continue to work with them.
You wanted to add something? We'll come back to you.
Okay,
you yield or? I did see you
I might add
indicating.
some fuel to it. So I don't know.
No, bring the guy. Bring the guy.
We have fire extinguishers on hand.
Okay,
Have
good.
no fear.
That's good. I never accept. While I'm 100% certain there's some truth to the plight and the cry of government saying that no money there for certain things. Money is there on the private sector and in public sector. It's a matter of priorities and what you determine is important.
That's right.
So you have to be just honest with yourself in terms, I've been saying for years, and I'll repeat it here, that the Caribbean has a poor practice, especially on the government side of things, in investing in R&D. We leave it primarily to the university system that is UE that we have. But there's a lot of scope and area for investing or budgeting for R&D. We have $1 billion budget in St. Kitts, speaking numbers. That's the last $1 billion from government. 1% of $1 billion is 10 million, if my math's correct. So let's say 0.5%, which is probably far less than governments. I'm not speaking about this government. Governments generally probably have, and any business, any entity, probably have a wastage of, say, 5%, to be generous. 5% automatically is wasted somehow. 5%. I'm talking about 0.5%. If we set aside 0.5% of the budget for R&D, we have projects that's $5 million easy. Where we spoke about the skill set, and he addresses all these factors. We speak about skill sets. There are capable people, young people and otherwise in St. Kitts and Nevis, that are trying things, technology-wise. But maybe there isn't the market, there isn't the investment, so they're straddling different priorities to move things forward. I lived that life the last 15 years, starting projects. Sometimes all you need, you can't go to the banks for financing. You can't go to XYZ. We don't have that investment culture, the investment ecosystem to push this in. That's just the reality. If we take the US, the big, great, successful US as an example, what we are experiencing and talking about with the internet, that's from government. That's from a government project, the internet, primarily, right? And then you speak about Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is not Silicon Valley without the government, because Stanford University, the projects they got primarily were from government, or government projects, if you look at the history. And it just created a perfect ecosystem where the government was prepared to spend R&D. Stanford had the educated, the whatever, engineers. And then and then some of them went out as a result of taking on the projects and the contracts, start up their own companies and expand from there. So they had the ecosystem developed there. So why I mention government is that you cannot depend for early ecosystem development. You cannot depend on the financial institutions. They have a responsibility to their
prudent.
You cannot depend on businesses in the initial stage because
they're risk
averse. But once you get a few successful stories, FOMO takes over, fear of missing out. So you don't want to miss out on the next train. I didn't realize this guy was going to generate and be bought out for $50 million, and all he had was $5 million invested. I can't miss the next train. We need that in the region in order to develop our ecosystem. So who can we rely on? The government I am going to put a lot of pressure on the government. The government has the ability. We have CBI, and PM Drew has mentioned that we need to diversify. Even with all the infrastructure we're putting in place, and all the skill set training, etc. If we don't have a revenue generator in 5-10 years to replace what the CBI is doing, even 50% of that, we're not going to get very far. So we need an injection in the system where we capture the imagination, the energy. There are lots, I speak with young people all the time, talk about AI. There was a young guy, I think he's attached to robotics. Some of the stuff the guy showed me he did in AI, world-class stuff. But where can he get an investor to move to the next stage? So we need an R&D. I'm appealing to whomever is available, but the government, private sector, maybe the cable may have a little change under the mattress somewhere. Come together and have an R&D fund, call it whatever you want, but essentially allow persons with ideas. We have the Innovation Hub, expanding that. Persons with ideas, giving them the runway to try a thing, and then we build on that. That is what we need.
I would expand on that and take the pressure off of the government specifically and have the UWI drive that. As the governments are all contributors to that, I would, there's open campus here, there's open campus in Antigua, if I'm not mistaken.
Five Islands campus,
right.
full campus.
Which is like heavy,
right? Yeah, so I'd centralize that innovation hub, that incubator type of setup with UE. So you've got students there coming in, experimenting, collaborating, and you drive that there through a much larger base of people than just the population of kids.
Yeah. Well, I want to agree with what Philip is saying there, and to expand on a few other things. Certainly, a small island developing states, we really have to show we can pool resources. Rodney talked about how the universities in California were central to developing Silicon Valley with government investment and so on. The internet itself started as a project by government during the Cold War era to enable communication between the Pentagon and the White House and Congress and so forth. And therefore, they drove investment in that to get that going and so on. This is what we have as the internet today. But let me expand more broadly. Well, let me speak more broadly to the idea of budget. Budget is a very thorny issue. We live in a democracy, and priorities get developed in ways that aren't always related to what is best developmentally for the country.
Yeah.
There are considerations, political considerations, other kinds of. And the conversations that we need to have around what are in our best interest, long-termly, medium-termly, developmentally speaking, is a conversation that has to be had with the entire populace, and is a conversation that the populace has to buy into. So imagine trying to have a conversation about digital transformation, what it will do for the country 10, 15 years from now, and asking people to forego some of the social programs that we now have, whether you call them Lyft, PAP, whatever you call them. Telling people, look, we have one pie. The pie can't do everything, but what we can do, we can prioritize and so on. How many people will go along with you? How many people will buy into the short-termism that prevents us from being able to make those medium-term, long-term decisions? That is where a lot of that happens. And if you're into politics, you're there to win and to make sure that you are able to continue doing what you feel is in the best interest of the country. But if you're going to be there to do what you believe is in the best of the interest of the country, you first have to win.
And to win,
you have to
continues.
There's a cycle.
I'm so happy you're the one that said this.
So we have to begin to sensitize people as to what is in our long-term interest, and it requires us as individuals to get out of our political corners sometime and begin to speak with one voice, irrespective of where we are, as to what is in our best interest. So, but going back to what Philip says, it's about prioritization. I think Rodney also hit on it. It's about priorities, and that is what I'm talking about. But the government has recently put together what we call a digital transformation management unit. And the purpose of that, one of the main objectives of that digital transformation management unit, is to take a broad view of what needs to happen across government from a digital transformation standpoint, eliminating a lot of the redundancies, so you have ministry this and ministry that and department that, wanting to do similar things, but not having someone looking from the top down to see that those are the things happening, and you need to connect and see how you can reduce costs, reduce redundancy, and things of that sort. So that is a critical step in moving this thing forward.
Certainly, I can attest to experiencing the operating in silos within the administration, and it's gone across administration. So there's no political alignment to it. It just happens.
And across countries as well.
So definitely, I can attest to that's something that we need. We've seen it with multiple departments, and it's only after you start to advertise a particular initiative you get some feedback on another end saying, oh, but we've had that initiative since last year, but we didn't know, or that sort of thing. So I'm happy to hear that the digital management unit is coming on board, or is on board and is looking into these things, because then that leads me into my next question where I was going to head into: how will this digital age and implementing the digital transformation that the government is looking to do, how will that affect things like transparency within government?
Right, so one of the key elements of the digital transformation program is creating what we call open government, right? That is making information about the government's operations available to the entire public. Of course, there'll always be a need for a classification system, a system of classification, where you say this kind of information can't be accessed by the public, because information accessible to the public in St. Kitts and Nevis is accessible to everybody everywhere. And so for whatever reasons, national security and other kinds of reasons, there'll always be information that will not be immediately accessible. But the idea of open government is one of the key pillars of our digital transformation program, and getting information accessible to the public means getting it in a form that is more accessible. That is to say, the information must be digitized, right, so that people can access it from home, on the internet, and so on and so on. So that is a critical component.
Okay, so then how do we maintain the balance? So we say this is where we're heading to. We spoke about ensuring digital literacy. We spoke about reaching the young persons. How do we then maintain the balance between us plummeting towards a digital era while ensuring that we don't leave people behind here? What do we need to implement? And I'll let the private sector persons say what they think is necessary, whether from their end, how they can contribute, etc. And then we'll move out to government again.
Well, it touches government to some degree. A parent shared with me an experience. This was maybe 2 months ago. We were at a conference here in St. Kitts, and at the lunch break, we struck up a conversation, and I saw her on the phone, and she mentioning something about school, and she had to communicate with a teacher. That's all. He sent her a WhatsApp. She said, "No, I'm using an app." And I said, "An app?" He said, "Yeah, it's an app that we have all the schools on, and the teachers communicate, etc. Parents, students, so it's just one of those typical emails.
Google Classroom or something like that?
No, it was a different, I forget the name of it, but it wasn't the Google Classroom. And I struck up a conversation, because I was curious as to especially on the teacher end of it, not knocking the teachers, but in my experience working around these systems, generally it always comes down to human interaction, human training, the mindset, etc. And generally, if you don't get the teachers on board in a situation like that, it becomes difficult in rolling it out, because the teachers are the key point of contact in most cases. They have to fill out the registry, they have to submit the homework, interact with parents, etc. So a lot of these things, even with the best system, you still need to ensure that you have the people coming along at the correct pace that need to be along. And then once they're in the specific space, then you can have the system functioning correctly, because the users will have the confidence that once they submit, say, a query, they expect the response within 12, 24 hours and not wait until next week or whatever the case may be. So All those type of things in terms of the training aspect of it is important. And speaking about the private-public sector collaboration and sticking with education, we were in the process some years back, maybe 12, 13 years back, where eCaribbean we were trying to spearhead a project, and I think the cable was actually Cable and Flow at the time. We had solicited their involvement as well. And they came along quite readily, so kudos, where they were prepared to provide the infrastructure in terms of the internet in secondary schools. We were building out a custom application for school management and also dealing with the Ministry of Education. We were not able to get it to launch, but some lessons were learned in the interaction. But I mentioned it to say that there are examples of attempts in terms of private sector working with public sector and other private sector partners to come towards a solution. So I would recommend the government go in that direction as much as it makes sense, to bring in the private sector where the resources exist, to partner and see about executing some of these programs and projects.
Those are some excellent steps you highlighted. Speaking of collaboration, though, can either Nigel or Ophelia tell me, what steps has the government taken with respect to collaborating, whether regionally with regional entities or international entities? And do we think that these types of collaborations, or do we need more of these types of collaborations, especially from a budget aspect and ensuring the technical expertise?
So in terms of collaboration, one of the things to note, you'll be hearing a lot about digital transformation globally. So when it comes to any opportunities that we get at the regional level, whether it is OECS, CARICOM, whether it is with our international partners, through the International Telecommunications Union, once there's a project that is identified for which the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis can benefit, then we are involved. Once that is done, then we can leverage whatever expertise, whatever recommendations, and whatever budget is available. Also note that there are tight budget constraints as well. Things has changed over the years, where previously there may have been a more excess in terms of budget availability. However, what you find is that international organizations or regional organizations may look at a cluster, they may look at a group. So you may say there are specific projects geared towards the OECS countries. And so where there are opportunities, we do seek to leverage those opportunities and to build synergies where we can benefit from capacity building, training, any programs, and if budget is available, budget.
Okay, I know you have something happening this week, particularly with a Caribbean entity, right? So if you want to take a moment, I'll give you a shameless plug. I'll send you the bill afterwards, but feel free. Okay, so during this week, we have the CARICOM Telecommunications Union CTU ICT Week. St. Kitts and Nevis we are hosting it. It's run from the 30th of September until the 4th of October. There would have been a series of presentations, engagement at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort, and I'm inviting persons to come out. Tomorrow we will be having Caribnog. That's more of a technical operators forum where persons from the internet service providers, technical persons from various IT companies in St. Kitts and Nevis can come out and participate in that forum. We also have the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum. We know that cybersecurity is critical, is high priority for us as a country, as well as globally. And so it's an opportunity for persons to get to understand why is it so important, how can we protect ourselves, and also to be cyber resilient. On Friday, we are going to be having the first ever St. Kitts Tech Fest. We're calling it Tech Fest short for Technology Festival, and it's going to be from 10 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the National Heroes
Growth Park. And that is where we will be able to showcase the talent, the expertise of ICT. We've been talking about it a lot, but we also have an opportunity now to showcase from our local entrepreneurs, small businesses, large businesses, government. You'll be able to see how technology is being utilized now, and also get a look at some of the advancement in terms of 3D printing, robotics, generative AI, and coding, where we can be able to see persons, their life coding. And so you'll be able to assimilate what we're talking about with what is going on the ground. So we're excited about that, and we want you to come on out and to participate. It is free, so you don't have to pay.
I think people like to hear that, and as the old adage goes, when anything is free, take two. So I see that as a great initiative, and the fact that it shows the government's commitment towards public awareness, education as it relates to digital transformation, and drawing people, showing them the different avenues, encouraging them to take on that path. Because I know what you said earlier, that the difficulty you have with fielding certain technical positions, for other reasons, but at least this one you can start to show some of our younger persons, hey, these are opportunities that are there for you. And speaking of opportunities, we know we spoke about the budget and the lack thereof, but people generally, the main thing that drives them is money. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a bit about how or what benefits can micro, small to medium enterprises make, or what benefits can they find from utilizing digital transformation, whether as part of their business or starting digital businesses, tech businesses, and how can that help as it relates to job creation and economic growth within the society? Anyone can start. I really have no preferences.
Anybody wants to start?
On the line, start.
Yeah, okay, I can start. So, how can small businesses benefit from digital transformation? In a number of ways. First of all, as a core component of our digital transformation program, there is a program or a component of empowerment of small businesses. In making digital transformation sustainable, we are talking about providing the skills for people to be able to drive digital transformation forward, but the skills are not going to reside in government only. A lot of those skills reside in the private sector. A lot of skills that exist in the private sector, many of those skills do not reside in government, or to the extent that we would want. So we're going to have to partner with small businesses to do a lot of the work that we need done, whether it's about building out networks, building software, creating systems. You're for example, developing a critical system in government. Say you want to do something in cybersecurity. We're relying on the private sector, and many of those businesses in the private sector are small businesses, and we are having a very critical focus on small businesses because we have to grow the ecosystem. We have to make sure that businesses can grow and provide the kind of services that we need within government, but also that we need small businesses to be able to provide to the country on a whole. So small businesses are going to be empowered in that way, and there are other ways that we can talk about.
So from my perspective, the internet is an enabler, all right? Small businesses are the growth engine of any economy. So in order to create or foster more, or the growth of more small businesses, you need to ensure that everyone has access to the internet, first of all, because no business can survive, generally, most of them, without having access to the internet. What we find, though, is that, and I want to take it back to education, through the schools, the curriculum needs to be developed in such a way that students are leaving school with the mentality now that the internet is a tool and not just for TikTok and Instagram. This is a work tool. I can develop a business from this. I can connect to partners across the world and then enable my business to thrive here locally where I am. So, people, think of the internet and just think downloading stuff or maybe accessing a particular program as opposed to
Entertainment value.
entertainment, yeah. But it's I mean, literally the world is out there and there's so much business, so much capital to be taken advantage of or obtained if persons really kind of just sit down and look at what is available to you and not just have the social media algorithms just drive your use in that way versus, you know, tailoring it towards business.
Rodney, as a small business owner yourself,
Yeah.
can you tell us a bit about the benefits of digital tools?
Oh, well, it can be an equalizer in terms of competing with other businesses that may be larger. If you know how to utilize the tools, if you know what tools are available to begin with. And also, I think, adding to Philip,
yeah.
Adding to Philip's point about you know, how people utilize the access points. Shifting again mentality from primarily consumption to creator, and not just creator in terms of influencer creator. No, not knocking that. That's an area, but we can expand the creation aspect of it. Most businesses probably still don't have a website. They may have an online presence, but piggybacking on social media.
Correct.
Which, if you run afoul of one regulation that you're not even aware of, there goes your whole business online. If you're defending, right?
Exactly.
So that's why in terms of literacy and education, explain to persons the importance of having a website, even if it's a one-pager to begin with. If it's the budget,
What
a
about
landing page,
what about
right?
a digital payment platform?
Digital payment platform. So now we're adding to the cake. We're on another layer of the cake. Some people consider that more high level in terms of understanding and appreciating. We have National Bank, not giving any plugs. They're probably, we're going back a bit. Years ago, I'm not dating myself again. The financial institutions weren't quite ready, even when there was an inkling of demand for e-commerce. A lot of the financial institutions were very risk averse, were just very not quite understanding maybe, and not wanting to get their hands into something they weren't too sure about. So there was a very slow moving process in terms of national advancement as relates to e-commerce. You still had PayPal, you had other things out there, but the difficulty of interacting with those weren't very attractive to a lot of businesses. Now it's I would say much easier if you go to any of the financial institutions. They have a payment platform that they engage with. You could get it set up, but there's still a ways to go in making it much easier comparative to, say, again, like a PayPal. ECCB started the Dcash. I think they're on to phase 2 with their digital currency. So if that comes off again, there may be an opportunity for better interaction points to utilize e-commerce, because that is a game changer as well. You introduce e-commerce, you don't have to be worrying about, depending on what your service or business is, you could be earning money while you sleep, while you're away doing something else. So that is significant.
Well, making money is definitely what most people go into business for.
Well,
typically. Philip, I'll come back to you for a bit as we're speaking about small businesses. Is there any particular innovation or services that the cable has currently or is planning to introduce that can help particularly micro, small to medium enterprises in their businesses?
Yeah, I would say as a cable customer, for example, you can get the Platinum Loyalty Card. So you were just making reference to payment platforms and processes of that type. A small business generally, well, some of the micro ones, they're not going to have the infrastructure and setup that a more mature business may. So as an individual, I have a cable service, I'm going to go and get a PLC card. What that card will allow me to do is to access online payments or to process online payments and things of that type, where before you may have to either go into the bank and send a wire or do it through some manual process. So that's how we kind of engage in that way.
So what about any particular internet plans for small businesses?
So there is a set internet plan called SME Engage, or it's literally small businesses in the name, that we created about 2 years ago for small businesses to give them the bandwidth that they needed, but at a price point that was affordable. In the market, I noticed that there was an absence of a plan of this type, and working with the team, we were able to put this plan together and launch it about 2 years ago, and it's been extremely successful.
So it's more beneficial than, let's say, I go and take out a personal plan on my own.
Yes, if you've got a small business, getting a residential plan, it's going to give you access to the internet, but this particular plan is going to give you a lot more bandwidth. You'll get an account manager as well, so there's a lot more value in going this route.
And that's actually critical, the value component. I think that's what a lot of people tend to miss in the digital era. They think that going digital means removing that human element. And I've heard all of you speak today about the fact that the human element is still very much needed and required. It's just a different set of skill sets. So as we head into our wind down, because I know you all have other places to be, and thank you again for taking the time to be here with us. I will ask each of you the same final question and have you just use that as your wrap-up, and then we'll head out into our outro. So tell us, in your words and from your perspective, what does the future of digital transformation, or what do you think the future of digital transformation looks like for St. Kitts and Nevis, especially short to medium term? So we're thinking 5 to 10 years out. You've always been our starter.
Okay. So when I think of digital transformation, I really see young people really finding opportunities to empower themselves. I think about people who are in the media business, whether they are camera operators, videographers, whatever they're doing. A lot of their work really depends on the use of digital technology. And as we evolve digitally, I see a lot of these skills coming into demand. So I really see young people really finding their way, finding ways and means to get employed or create their own businesses based on the technology that is available. You talked about earlier the idea that people may feel that technology is going to displace people. And this discussion has become a bit more acute as we talk about the advent of artificial intelligence. That to me is a narrow perspective on the whole idea of artificial intelligence. It is, how can we make use of artificial intelligence technology to create businesses, power our existing businesses and so forth, and therefore find other avenues to generate income. So if you look at the cable, for example, or other companies around town, you can find that they have not really scaled down in terms of the manpower they need. It is just that they're able to add value to their businesses by creating new services and therefore employing more people and generating more capital. So I see digital transformation as really creating a pathway for young people and people of all ages to really become involved, stay connected, and to improve their way of life.
Innovation at its best. Philip, can I hear from you?
Repeat that question again, please.
How do you, from your perspective, what do you think digital transformation within the Federation looks like in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think life as people know it will transform. And I say that because of the arms race that is happening in AI right now. So if you visited California right now, all of the billboards around, AI is everywhere. AI, that's all you hear about. When you look at the companies that are there, look at the tools that we use, it is inevitable that everything we do is going to be AI driven. But as Nigel said, this does not mean that there has to be some massive displacement across employment bodies and stuff like that. People need to be retooled. So instead of having to crunch a number or crunch a problem for 5 minutes, an AI tool can spit that out for you in seconds and enable you to get to providing a service or accessing a service that much faster. So now that we've earned that extra half an hour back in our lives, what can we do with that? So it's about repurposing those types of tools and then using that to drive productivity and add value in the spaces that we are in.
I really love that, and I hope that comes to fruition because I would love to get back some time in my life. Rodney?
Yeah, I agree with all the points made so far. Just a bit of in looking forward, just getting some perspective on the past. 20-something years ago, that's a generation ago, we had a software development company based in St. Kitts. The majority of which I was lucky to work for, the majority of staff in this organization were young people. I was 22 at the time. The oldest was the CEO, and he was probably just knocking about 30, thereabout. We had men and women represented, so it was diverse. We had of all the staff members, only one person was non-national. And there was still somebody from the region, someone from Trinidad, young man from Trinidad. We had staff from St. Paul's, staff from Keon, Bastille. So, in my view, having experienced that, my expectations are extremely high. And I would say a generation later, somewhat disappointed based on what we had. But still encouraged because I know what we still have in terms of the capability of the youth and the intent of the government to seriously move forward with transformation is encouraging. But having experienced that, I stress again, because to me that was the pearl of a potential Silicon Valley. Talking about young people, half of them with degrees, half of them without. So again, diverse, because while I agree with the UE standpoint, there's still the majority and a lot of people. The people, we need a recruitment process, and that is where we lack capabilities. Jamaica do it very well on the sporting and track and field. Yeah. We need a intentional recruitment process.
And incubator.
Correct. We identify the persons. Now, some may want to go to university and further exact support, provide the avenues as much as possible. Others may not, but they have the mentality. And the criteria is that you have the persona, the mentality to drive, adopt, move quickly. Because again, some people may not be patient for even 2-year process. In a university, they want to pursue this thing 6 months and see what happens. They want to be very nimble. So you find these people and you support them as much as possible. These people are there. They're all over. A lot of them are frustrated. What we're driving is a brain drain still in the region because of that. So true. So another aspect is where I would like to see is the government. I'm not putting pressure on the government, but these are not heavy, in my view, things to execute. Present incentives. We have a rich diaspora. Present incentives where you encourage diaspora members who have memory resources, whether in terms of investment, connections, etc., and identifying that we have our burgeoning skill set locally, and based on incentives that the government may provide, be prepared to set up shop or partnerships in federation. So that allows for certain businesses, allows for expansion of skill sets, etc. And we had that example, again, a generation ago. SKN Vibes, that is known, came out of someone from the diaspora setting up shop in Sandy Point, and members of the business eventually went on to form SKN Vibes, young men. So let us get much more of that. How do we get much more of that? Because again, I'm going to say 5-10 years from now, we don't know what the landscape will be. We're a very small nation. We need to have deeper connections with our diaspora, with the local and national. We need to empower the young people, find them, understand what they need, the support they need, and find mechanisms to drive them forward. And that, to me, will complete the loop of digital transformation that I would like to see. Adding to whatever it is, whatever else that we would be trying to execute. That's it, sorry.
No, I definitely understand the disappointment. I thought we'd be like the Jetsons driving around in those little cars by now, flying. So I too have my own level of disappointment. So we'll now ask Ophelia to bring up the rear and just tell us, what does a digitally transformed St. Kitts and Nevis look like in the next 10 years?
Digitally transformed St. Kitts and Nevis, I foresee that we should have established the ICT Innovation Center by then, which would provide opportunities for expansion of digital skill sets, opportunities for small businesses, for persons of any age to really start their own business, to be able to see an influx of persons from the diaspora and from global to actually come here and to have somewhat of a simulation of a Silicon Valley. We have persons of great talent here and abroad, and I would see here as becoming a melting pot of different nationalities coming to St. Kitts for that experience. I also foresee that there will be a ubiquitous view in terms of intensifying digital systems in every sector. I could imagine that both young and old will be engaging in technology in different ways. AI, yes, has transformed what we have known over the years in terms of taking information, simulating information, machine learning. And you would also see a difference in terms of the health sector. I foresee that we would see more digitization in the health sector and transforming things. However, at the same time, I would like us to actually remain true to our indigenous culture as well and strike that balance and not to allow the technology to transform us to a point that we cannot recognize ourselves as being human, as being Kittitians and Nevisians. And I'm also mindful of the health impact that can actually occur as a result of overexposure to screens and the intensification of our use of the technology, where we are sitting by our dinner table, WhatsApping members who are at the table. I don't want us to lose that
efficiency, conservation of energy.
I don't want us to lose that social connection because we are a small nation. Let us utilize the technology to benefit us, to enable us to support what we are doing to advance, but let it not take away the true identity that we have as Kittitians and Nevisians.
That was fantastic. Folks, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. It's been an extremely enlightening discussion, and it's definitely shown us that we have much more discussion, collaboration, and engagement to go. So I hope this isn't the end of it in your very specific fields, that you encourage that collaboration and you encourage the moving away from working in silos, especially between government and private sector. So thank you again to our guest contributors. Certainly thank you, our viewing and listening audience, for joining in today with us. As we continue to upgrade our system and embrace our new digital realities, let's ensure that we're uploading solutions, and solutions that benefit everyone, avoiding the negativity and avoiding, as Ophelia said, the removal of that social element. So be sure to stay connected for our next episode, our special conversations here on In Focus. Next week, we'll be wrapping up our six-session series with the topic, O Land of Beauty, Building Resilient Isles. So tune in with us next week on our special edition of In Focus, where we bring you conversations, reflections, and the way forward. Until then, stay plugged in and keep the conversation going.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, Digital Transformation, Connecting Our Digital Dots.